This tutorial is going to show you how to add floors and roofs now that we've added the different elevation levels. I want to go back to my first floor because that is where I'm going to add a slab for my first floor level, and then I can also add a second floor level from that line. So I want to go back to the Architecture tab, and within the Architecture tab I have a tool called Floor, and there's a pull down option that has Architectural, Structural, Floor by Face, and Floor Slab Edge. We haven't gotten to the structural elements yet, so we're not going to use the structural parts. And Floor by Face is similar to doing Wall by Face when you create a three-dimensional object and then you can add a floor or a wall to that three-dimensional object. We're going to stick with Architectural Floor. And similar to what we saw with the wall, we have a generic floor that is the default, but if we do the pull down, there are different options. Even though these are not structural floors, they have structural elements in them, like lightweight concrete, that's what the LW is for, and a 2-inch metal corrugated steel deck. Steel bar joists, wood joists, but also wood joists with different finishes on them. Again, since this is a residential project, I'm going to select the wood joist 10-inch with a wood finish. If I wanted to change it, I would edit it and duplicate it before making any changes. So the changes I might make is that I might have larger joists than the 10-inch wood joist. I could have a 12-inch, or I could have something smaller. We always want to size that based on the code requirements and the distance of the spans, but that's not something we're going to work on right now. Another thing you might notice is that the plan has gotten grayed out. So different from walls, when we do floors and roofs and some other items which we will see as we go further into the tutorials, they are made with sketches. And what that does is it allows us to draw it as a line first, adjust things, and then accept that sketch so that we can start making things and then see how they look. We have different options within that. We have a boundary line. You notice the slope arrow, which allows us to say where the slope is. That seems to work more for sloped floors, like if we had an auditorium, something like that where we needed to have a ramp. This is good for ramps. Span direction, again, that goes back with a structural floor, which we're not going to worry about right now. So we're going to stick with boundary line. Then we would move over here to the tools we use to draw with. So we can just use a line, and we can use it as a chain like we did with our walls. If we have a rectangular space, we can use that, and we can have lots of different shapes, and this is going to help more as you start getting into unique shapes and sizes with your building designs. I'm going to stick with the line because the project does have a slightly irregular shape and form. And as we get further into the project, we'll talk about where floors actually begin and end. But right now we're going to stick with the inside face of the walls that we put in earlier. So just like we saw with the wall, I'm going to stick with the interior corners, and I'm going to move around the project and create the sketch boundary for the project. Remember, this wall is an interior wall, so I'm going to keep going and make my floor for the entire project. And when I'm done, I made sure that those two lines connected together. These two lines that we see here are about the slope, so we're not going to worry about that now since we're not doing structure at this point. So now that I've finished sketching, I want to hit the check mark, the Finish Edit mode. When I hit the check mark, what Revit does is checks to make sure that all of the lines actually are enclosed, and if they are not, they will give you an error message, and you need to make sure you go back and correct it, or it will not let you finish the sketch. So I'm hitting the check mark, and now you notice that it shows me that wood flooring. That's something that can be a little distracting, so I can go to Edit Type, I can go to Edit My Structure, and then when I go look at the Finish Oak Flooring, I can change the surface pattern from the 3-inch parallel to none. Now if I'm using this floor anywhere else that I want to see that pattern, that's going to turn it off everywhere. So if there are other instances where I want to see the pattern, I want to duplicate it and have one with a pattern and one without. So now that pattern is gone, but I still have that construction in the building information model. If I go to my 3D, you can see the floor beyond, and another way to look at things is to look at it from the bottom. So I can hold the shift button down, hold down the scroll wheel on my mouse, and look at it from the bottom, where we can see that it's actually below that first floor level. So our walls are actually going down to the first floor level and our floor is below the first floor level, which is of course not how we construct. So we would adjust that at a later date when we talk about the assembly of buildings. We can also click on the bottom of the cube and it shows us a worm's eye view. And then we can also add a section symbol and look at it as a section. We're going to look at that in another tutorial, so we won't do that right now, but those are the various options we have. So I want to make sure that I save, and then what I want to do is go back to my first floor plan, and now I want to add my second floor. Because the construction of the project is going to be similar, I can use the same floor type that I did before, but now I want to adjust the level. So since I'm drawing on the first floor, the default level is going to be the first floor. But if I want to draw something on the second floor, I can change that to the second floor and do the same thing that I did before. I create a sketch, drawing that line around the space. And also if I make a mistake, I can hit escape to get out of that draw command. I can click the line that I messed up and I can either use that blue dot to drag it over to where I want and continue, or I can delete it and draw it over again. I can also keep going and go back and adjust it after I've drawn everything. It depends on how you prefer to work when you're creating these boundaries for the sketch. Okay, so I'm done and I hit escape twice to get out of the command, and then I check it. Now since this is higher up, it's giving me this message asking me if I would like the walls that go up to this floor level to attach to the bottom. That's up to you because we can attach it in other ways in the future. Right now I'm just going to hit attach, and then we can go back to our 3D and we can see our second floor is there. If I deselect it, now we can't see through it anymore to what is below, but if I select it we can. And now I can start to see we're getting a little bit of a building. Last, I'm going to show you how to add a roof. So since this is a residential project, I'm going to put on a gabled roof or a hipped roof. We're going to learn more about roofs later in the class. I want to go up to the second floor so that I'm closer to the roof, and you can see that my CAD file that I linked in I can still see on the second floor. So you have to be careful if you have a different floor plan for your second floor, how do you use that? But one of the things I can do is I can click on it and I can hide it in view. And I'm trying to click on it. Sometimes it's hard to grab it because it's actually below. So if I go to my first floor and hide it in view, I can click on it. I can right click and hit hide in view elements, which hides the one thing you selected, or category, which hides all things like that. So you have to be careful because sometimes you only want to hide one thing. If I go to my second floor, it's still there, so that didn't really help. But those are ways that you can clean things up. And so to unhide things, I go to the toolbar down at the bottom to the little light bulb that says Reveal Hidden Elements, and it shows me everything I've hidden so far, which has only been this CAD plan. So I click on it, I right click again, and I unhide in view, and because I selected it as an element, category is grayed out, so it won't let me do that. So then if I hit the Reveal Hidden Elements again, that CAD plan is back. Anyway, let's go back to the second floor and let's add a roof. So roof is another tool on the Architecture tab at the top of the screen. Roof also has pull-down options similar to what we saw for our floors and our walls, but it has additional things like soffit, fascia, and gutter. Those are things you can add on as you get further into Revit, especially as you're doing a residential project that have those elements. Roof by face is similar to roof by face for wall and floor. Roof by extrusion is actually going to allow you to create a unique form. We're going to stick with roof by footprint right now, just to start with the basics, but you should play with all of those as you start to learn more about Revit. Very similar to what we saw with the floor, we're going to have a boundary line, we're going to draw, and here I want to start on the outside. Keep in mind that most roofs, especially in Mississippi, are going to have some overhang because of how much sun and rain we get. So I'm going to start with the edge of the building now, and I can adjust that as I go, and I can adjust it later. So what I'll do is just draw it to the edge of the house right now. And I'll show you how to adjust it later. So one thing that we see here is this is obviously not a super simple building, and so the form of the roof is kind of funky, and I actually have to build the roof in a slightly more complex way. So with roofs now we have all of these little triangles, and those triangles are indicating that that line and that part of the roof helps with slope. And so if I want to do a gable roof, which only slopes in two directions, as opposed to a hip roof, which slopes in all directions, typically 4 sides of a building, I need to deselect the sides that do not slope. So in this instance, I'm going to select this side. I'm going to uncheck Defines Roof Slope, and you notice that little triangle went away. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and because all of these over here are a little more complex, I want to make sure I select all of them. And this roof is going to look really weird when I'm done, again, because this project is not a simple project. So now I have this side and this side that define the roof slope. When I click on that line, the roof slope is 9 inches over 12 foot. So that's rise over run. That's a relatively steep roof, but that's something we can look at if we don't know the actual dimension, and we can adjust it later. I'm going to leave all of these others, and actually what I'll do is I will uncheck these so that all on the east and west side of the house are not defining roof slope, and I'll leave the ones on the north and the south sides to define the roof slope, and we'll see what it looks like. This is not actually what the roof for this project looks like, by the way. Another default where it asks if you want to attach the highlighted walls to the roof. If you hit attach, then it automatically attaches them. If you hit don't attach, we can do it in a different way. So I'm not going to attach it, so I can show that to you later. So now where it's cutting through on the second floor is because we have the roof associated with the second floor instead of the roof. So if we change that, then it's not cutting through the roof anymore. And if we go to the 3D, it's a little funky, but not too bad. So it did not attach the walls to the roof, so what I can do is I can click the wall, and there's an option in the Modify tab for walls that says Attach Top Base, and then I can click the roof that I want to attach it to, and that wall now attaches to that roof. And that will happen if I move the wall around, or the roof around, because it's always associated to that roof plane. So that is how we add floors, walls, and roofs. So play with these elements and find out different ways to achieve your design ideas with those tools.